And thank you for your welcome. For me, it's so great to be with you. I have to stretch for the bell a little bit as we just enjoy a few minutes of sitting together. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Hmm. It's so good to see everyone as always, and good to be here. I will apologize in advance, as I have many times, because I'm not here very often, and I have an opportunity to speak to you. I have way too much, but that's the way it goes. One thing leads to another, uh, but I'll give you an idea of where my mind has gone in this. As some of you know, there is an intensive going on this week at Appamada in Austin. And part of the focus of that teaching is the practice of shikantaza, the Japanese term for just sitting, a real foundation for our Zen practice. So I'm going to say a few things about that as a bridge with the folks that are in that integrated intensive. But also it leads to and connects with the central piece that really sort of ignited my thoughts about what I want to talk about today, which was a short piece by the Irish poet Pádraig um, which he posted in his Substack, um, entitled "The Presence of Absence," which connects with shikantaza. So I'll speak about that. And then I want to sort of bring it back home in a very specific way, um, also with some poetry, but literally home to our sanghas. The two poems that I'd like to offer are both written by our teacher, Trudy Johnston. And since she's here, she can read them for us, and hopefully, or I might share with her, including some wonderful teachings about not knowing and about embodiment. So that's kind of the landscape that we're going to go over. And they have a connection for me, so you'll hopefully see what they are. From the first moment of life until the very last, we're always just here. From the very first moment until the last, we're always just here. I mean, it seems ridiculously obvious, but we don't always live that way. Not with that awareness, anyway. Always just here. And I'm not talking about the invitation to live in the present moment. You should wake up, be mindful, inhabit the life you have. It's not that instrumental, what I want to talk about today. All of that's, of course, important, but it's not exactly the essence of shikantaza. In fact, if you take that little phrase, always just here, we easily focus on the first word and the last word, always here. But the just in the middle is the hard one. impossible to contain in words, difficult to point out to others. I think it's worthy of our best effort to embody, and it's a practice of a lifetime. Thusness, suchness, primary awareness only, just, always just here. And this, let's just call it pure awareness, which can be called by all these other names, can't be developed. It doesn't change in response to circumstances. Pure awareness doesn't need to grow up, and it never grows old, because the unconditioned isn't subject to conditions, but it includes and is fully awake to all the constantly shifting conditions and contingencies that we call our life. And shikantaza is the Japanese word used to describe, well, it's translated literally as just sitting. So there's that just again, just sitting. In the midst of our lives, just sitting in the midst of our lives without striving for something more or turning away from all there is or all that we find ourselves to be. Maybe it would make as much sense to say that our sitting practice is the practice of absence as much as it is to say that it is a practice of presence. But what happens in the space of absence? And also the question comes up, like, absent of what? So those are the prompts for your inquiry, for mine, our daily koan. And historically, and maybe mythologically, we can read that Siddhartha Gautama, leaving behind the great ease and pleasure of his princely home, and then later relinquishing all the powerful transformative yogic practices he ultimately mastered, he left both worlds in a way. And in parts of the story, it says he recalled a time when, as a child, he sat under a tree and spontaneously felt ease and joy. You could remember that. And maybe you have those kinds of reveries too, like I do, sitting next to a stream, walking in the hills somewhere, or whatever it might be. But remembering such a moment, he decided to sit down under a tree again, the Bodhi tree, and settle back into what was somewhat like this natural childlike state of pure awareness that he'd remembered. But it's really important to know that it's not childlike, because that would mean regressive, naive, simplistic. It's not a going back. I would imagine that this was a setting that where one could rest in a natural state of simplicity and fullness. That's there all the time when everything else has fallen away. A peaceful boundlessness outside of time. The embodied inconceivable sitting under that tree. And all of this sounds like he reached a new or special spiritual destination. Sometimes we call it enlightenment. But shikantaza, just sitting, doesn't help us reach a new destination, spiritual or otherwise. It allows us to no longer have one, to drop all destinations, the same relinquishment that the Buddha practiced. But how do you go nowhere and end up everywhere? Gets kind of strange in the way we think about it. And so rather than focusing on coming and going, which suggests there's a destination we're attempting to reach, I want to talk more about presence and absence. which is more commonly referred to in the Buddhist teachings as form and emptiness or form and boundlessness. But then I found like the next question, how do we understand absence that is not the consequence of loss? What kind of absence are we talking about? It's not the consequence of losing. Because most of us, at least this is my reflection as a psychologist, we talk about attachment styles in developmental psychology um, because we're attaching creatures and we're shaped around our losses or perceived losses of significant relationships and how we deal with those kind of comings and going. That's the psychological um, kind of loss. And then there's grief, of course, which comes from the way we live and process profound loss of something or someone, even an idea. And these are really helpful psychologically and helpful in healing. And they describe our adaptation to absences in response to loss. But what's the practice of absence that's not associated with a loss? I think that art sometimes can point to these things. And just one more little reflection I want to make before I talk about Pádraig Tuama's um, reflection on art. And it comes from Lou Richmond, who's one of Suzuki Roshi's disciples. And he wrote something about this in Lion's Roar in September of 2022, a couple of years ago. These are his words. He says, to sit in the fullness of pure awareness has great power. It shakes the earth. They say that when Buddha was enlightened, the earth shook. And there's only one awareness that's deep enough and broad enough to encompass all of us. And that's the awareness of just awareness, just being here. That is the awareness that can reveal to us our inexhaustible and intrinsic compassion. And then he goes on to say, Buddhist life in this kind of sitting is sometimes thought of as rather passive, sitting quietly, not saying or expressing anything, not celebrating things, not dancing, not playing music, not going to the movies, all these things which are really fun. But that understanding that it's not all those things focuses a little bit too much on the emptiness side. And Zazen or Shikantaza doesn't reject any side, form versus emptiness, but to learn to move and inhabit both sides, if you want to call it that, so that the basis of our life has some deep, compassionate support, a backdrop, form and emptiness. We're not trying to suck the joy out of our experience and live in a drab, black-robed life, but to round out our life so we can become deeply and authentically compassionate and joyous. And then this is going to include joy, sorrow, birth, death, delusion, enlightenment. The first time I sat a 7-day session at San Francisco Zen Center, on the last day, as a way to help us begin to reintegrate back into the world, we did walking meditation outside. So that means there's 60 of us walking out the front steps of City Center at Page and Laguna Street in San Francisco and walking around a giant block doing slow walking meditation in these black robes. You can imagine people going by. The largest Harley-Davidson dealership in the nation is 2 blocks away. And so these people are coming by watching the Night of the Living Dead, kind of, this is not what this is about. So let's turn towards some art. And this post by Pádraig Tuama entitled "What Happens in the Space of Absence." What happens in the space of absence? Think of it when you're sitting in the Zendo. What happens in that space of absence? And then the subtitle he put is art and what it can evoke. And some of you, maybe most of you, received the email that I sent is invitation. And in the email, um, I shared this image. So most of you will have seen it, maybe not everybody. It's a ancient statue, what's remains of it, and it's in the Louvre. Some of you may have seen it. I've seen it. Um, so I just wanted you to take a look at it because the piece I'm going to read is about taking a look at it. So I've offered you just a little background about shikantaza, about absence and presence, about just awareness, this larger um, background of all consciousness. And here the word, Tuama says, there's a famous poem by Rainer Maria Rilke titled Archaic Torso of Apollo. He says it's a sonnet, so it's short, just 14 lines long. It describes looking at the remnant of what once was a complete statue of that Greek god of archery, music, dance, truth, and healing. So this is the image that you just looked at briefly. I'll read the 14 lines twice so you can hear them. Some of you may be quite familiar with this. It's well known. We cannot know his legendary head with eyes like ripening fruit. And yet his torso is still suffused with brilliance from inside, like a lamp, in which his gaze, now turned to low, gleams in all its power. Otherwise, the curved breast could not dazzle you so, nor could a smile run through the placid hips and thighs to that dark center where procreation flared. Otherwise, this stone would seem defaced beneath the translucent cascade of the shoulders and would not glisten like a wild beast's fur, would not from all the borders of itself burst like a star. For here there is no place that does not see you. You must change your life. Again, you cannot know his legendary head with eyes like ripening fruit, and yet his torso is still suffused with brilliance from inside like a lamp, in which his gaze, now turned to low, gleams in all its power. Otherwise, the curved breast could not dazzle you so, nor could a smile run through the placid hips and thighs to the dark center where procreation flared. Otherwise, this stone would seem defaced beneath the translucent cascade of the shoulders and would not glisten like a wild beast's fur, would not from all the borders of itself burst like a star. For here there is no place that does not see you. You must change your life. And Tuama writes, the poem starts off by telling us that much of the statue is missing. And that's what's left in the torso, but that, despite being a fragment of the full sculpture, is still suffused with brilliance from inside like a lamp. Before continuing with more ways of, in essence, saying that it's not the full piece. I mean, Rilke is saying it's not the full thing, but it's still overwhelming. He speaks of the dazzling chest, the intimate depiction of the hips. And I'll pause here for a moment. You know, in the last message to his followers, the Buddha said, make of yourself a light or a lamp. Find your own fullness. even as you come to terms with your own partiality, your brokenness, your incompleteness, your frailty, your majesty. And when you're in retreat, or when we're together here in inquiry, or even when you witness certain people coming forward and truly being themselves, like they do sometimes in inquiry, as naked as the statue. And even though they're revealing only maybe a small part of themselves or their lives, don't you see that they seem to glow? Maybe I'm speaking a little wildly here, but I don't think so. Suffused with a light that's really difficult to describe, even in the pieces that we see, the partiality. Tuama goes on, he says, the poem concerns itself with what is there and what is not. It's like Rilke is staring at a ghost memory of the full thing. And the effect of the artwork is as powerful as if no fragmentation had taken place, or daringly, even more powerful. Because he's looking at a body, and in that attention to the body, his own attention is drawn to himself. So now my words, what if we're able to sit with ourselves with a full appreciation that we are whole, even though we may feel broken or defaced? What if no fragmentation or damage has been done? I don't mean denying what's actually happened in our complicated and sometimes very difficult lives. Well, Rilke clearly sees what remains and he comments on it, but something more powerful is coming forward. An opening to oneself that the piece of art evokes. His attention comes back to himself, to the looker, to Rilke. Dogen wrote in his instructions for sitting, learn to take the backward step that turns your light inwardly. Exactly the same thing. To illuminate yourself. Body and mind of themselves will drop away and your original face will be manifest. If you want to attain suchness, if you want to attain suchness, you should practice suchness without delay. This is nothing more than the ancient fundamental teachings of sitting. So back to Pádraig, he says, so many of us have lost so much. Boy, that first phrase really hit me. So many of us have lost so much. And perhaps all we can do is stare at the ruins of what was once complete. He said, I get it. That's how it is with me too, he says. It's true that our attention is drawn to broken things. It doesn't interest me to try to forget what has been damaged. Rilke's poem doesn't say that there's a silver lining. What he's doing is looking, simply and truly, powerfully and carefully at what actually is in the here and now, in this moment in time. And Dogen says, my words again, body and mind of themselves will drop away and your original face will be manifest. Nothing disappears when we practice. We become intimate with just this, as the old masters say. Self-clinging releases and we meet just this. Tuama, about Rilke, he keeps looking and says that the statue from all the borders of itself seems to be bursting like a star. And then he says, I wonder how long he took in looking at this form. What I can guess is it was a long time. Because it's like he's seen back by the statue. Looking at it, something's happened in him. Isn't this what you experience here? You're looking and something happens to you, something comes back. We keep sitting and looking and listening and feeling from all the borders of ourselves, from our confines and the world around us. And he said, I wonder how long it took in looking at this form to see this way. How long does it take you to feel yourself fully held and be held by the entire universe? As if the wall of the Zendo looks back at you intimately, and at the same time, the entire cosmos appears before us and in us and as us, because Rilke says it bursts like a star, opening to everything, as we've been all along but didn't see. And then Tuama says, the final 5 words of this poem go beyond the question of admiration of the sculpture and give voice to the strange thing that can happen in us when we give our attention to something powerful, even broken. And those last 5 words are, you must change your life. So this final line is kind of a surprise. It was for me. It's abrupt and stark and unforgettable. And it transforms this aesthetic experience of looking at the statue into an ethical demand. You must change your life. The encounter with truth, with beauty, with vitality beyond decay or destruction isn't just some sort of like appreciation. It calls forward some sort of transformation. Just sitting is both the call and the response we read in this line. Our life is changed by just sitting and doing nothing in ways that we may never know. And others get changed in the process and response in ways that we're unlikely to ever know or appreciate. But we feel the echo of the pure precepts coursing through our veins. Refrain from all that's unwholesome, do everything that is good, and live and be lived for the benefit of all beings. There's no way to miss the aliveness and naturalness of the paramitas, which many of you are studying. Because they are flesh and blood offered with generosity in a way that's ethical, full of patience, with joyful effort and concentration, which is wise and a natural way of living. So what happens in the space of absence? An absence of what? The questions. Absence of what? Absence of self-concern. Absence of self-preoccupation. Absence of the dream, the self-centered dream. And what's possible without having to know, as I spoke about last time, and how does it bring us into our bodies? So I'm going to ask Trudy to unmute if she's able there. And do you have the poems, Trudy? You do? Okay. Do you remember the first line in the Rilke poem? It says, we cannot know.
I saw that, and it connected with that, because my poem starts, we don't know and can't know, and indeed maybe shouldn't know. So shall I read it all?
Please continue.
We don't know and can't know, and indeed maybe shouldn't know, the ripples that we leave behind in the wake of our passage across life's ocean. Our little boat surges, sputters, bobs across the chopping ocean. Sometimes the horizon heaves into view, other times we are deep in the trough, no end in sight. And again we might be bathing in a calm and tranquil sea. But the wake we leave spilling behind has its own life. maybe crashing into a smaller vessel, interrupting their trajectory, or adding to the wash of a mighty liner surging past. The churn may feed a passing albatross, or allow a dolphin a moment of joyous play, or drown a young seagull. We are each buffeted by time and the world, and in turn we buffet. It would be good to wave at passers-by and extend a warm ahoy, sailing onward. Could we leave nothing but love behind?
Could we leave nothing but love behind? We don't know and we can't know, and indeed maybe should not know the ripples that we leave behind in the wake of our passage. All these things happen that are so beautifully expressed in this sense of a wake. And we're buffeted by time in the world, and in turn we buffet. And maybe it'd be a good idea to reach out to each other, to notice each other, to look at each other, to see the wholeness and the fullness of each other. Because this, could we leave nothing but love behind? That's actually the moral imperative of our practice. That's the vow. And what happens in the space of absence? Maybe it's here, sitting online, sitting with the close friends, some of you in the Zendo this week. Maybe it's here in absence that we discover not only ourselves, but each other, our gaze extended and reflected back as we sit and breathe and look and listen together. The wake of our shared existences, meeting and reshaping each moment. And then what remains? I think so many of our spiritual practices, we strive for transcendence, to reach heaven, to go beyond, to step beyond whatever's wrong with us and whatever's lacking. And most practice suggests that this is the path. But then if we do so, we completely miss an equally essential gift of our practice, maybe the real, true promise, which is immanence. Existing here, now, just this, remember? Always just here. The loving presence, as Trudy's poem invites, awareness itself, that great awareness, untouched by human agency, discovered in the space of absence, sometimes in the threat or the proximity to death, maybe just the knowledge of death. This is the great matter. And I've said to someone recently when we were talking about some of the things that I'm dealing with and we're dealing with, I said, these days, the great matter matters greatly. From the first moment of life to the last, we're always just here, if we are here. So one final point by Trudy that I couldn't separate from the first, given what I'm talking about. And by the way, as you might imagine, Trudy has a number of these amazing pieces of poetry, which I'm helping her collate and put together, and then doing what I'm doing right now, offering teachings in response to them. So if we're fortunate and we have the energy, you might be able to have something in your hand called a book at some point, which would include these. So this being here, just this, immanence. Trudy.
The constant imminence of death, the falling away from this form towards we don't know what, is really only life itself, a constant falling towards we don't know what. I'm soothed by my pretense that I can grasp meaning and pattern. And I betray myself by pretending that I can grasp meaning and pattern. In me there is a universe in which the madly sane map maker plots and plans real and imagined territory, then calls it all reality. Oh, how sweet, how tender. How human.
How sweet, how tender, how human, as we plot and plan real and imagined territory and then call it our life, reality, constructing and maintaining a self, the practice of being human, appreciating this life. So you can see why I thought these were beautiful expressions of what it comes down to, what happens in the space of absence, and how our practice is an invitation to live in that space that's always available to us, that's always here, it's always what we are. And even if we're just looking at a fragment, a statue that's been deconstructed, our own life that seems broken, there's a fullness in the entire cosmos as they're bursting like a star. So we used a good bit of the hour, but I hope that it's been nourishing or inspiring in some way for you, maybe to ask your own questions, like the questions I was asking. What happens in the space of absence? How do we deal with an absence that isn't the result of loss? What is it that's actually absent? And how do we change our life? My trusty sister, Kathy.
Um, what do you think leaving only love behind means? I mean, we're big messes of people. How, what does that mean to you or to anyone else?
Yeah, because that's a great koan, isn't it? It's going to mean different things. And the question is, what if we could only leave a wake that is love behind? And so it's an impossible request, I think. But because we live with our practice by vow, which says that's my deepest intention. I know a vow you can't actually make happen fully, but it keeps you oriented.
Mhm.
And so it's more that than making it an actuality. And then we have to live with our brokenness. Our arms are off and our heads gone sometimes, but still know that we're complete at the same time. It's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty literal, so I was like, what? How does that even happen? And I guess you're right, it doesn't, but it is a good vow.
But it's what you do with your art. You produce things which come from goodness knows where. You can't actually say in a certain way.
Mhm.
And then someone else sees it, and then something happens as a
Yeah.
result. And then there's aliveness that comes, like when you and I were talking about the dolls that you showed me yesterday and the halo. Something happens that you couldn't have predicted.
Right.
And suddenly that's love. And it's everything else.
True.
Yeah.
True. So stop being so literal.
Oh, it's fine to be literal. It's because it brings you to the question.
Right.
Then we have something to rub up against.
That's a good question.
It's
I
a good
think,
question. It's a good one to stay with. Don't let me answer it too soon. Live with it.
right. Thank you.
Love you. Eileen.
Flint.
Eileen, what a joy to see you.
Oh, and to you as well. So here's the story. Um, I've been trying to look carefully at all the story making that goes on in my mind with everything in every moment that I experience. This vast story making around small facts to help me make up what I think is going on, and I've enjoyed being able to watch that and allow that to at least quiet down some and to see the space that is created and wonder what that is when you're not doing all of this other stuff and it lets me see things more clearly. uh, it lets me see things more clearly as to what is going on with my husband and my husband's health, to see it in a more clear-eyed, calmer, truthful way, the horror of it. Okay. What I do observe, though, feeling like that has been something beneficial, what I do observe, though, is that, so I can offer him that. But the minute he begins to actually honestly speak about what is going on with him, I start making up all kinds of stories very quickly because it's very frightening. Even though what he's telling me, I can already see. And so I don't even know why I'm bringing this up. It seemed like
How tender, how human.
yes, and this space where I'm not making up stories 1,000 miles an hour, which I'm really good at speculating, drawing on my history, making up what the space that is created. I think that is this that refers to the absence that we are speaking about. And I guess I thought, who knew that by kind of taking apart the blocks that you make your stories with, just taking apart those blocks of stories, that it would take you to this place of spaciousness and calm and quiet. I would like for it to be not just for me in my own inner world, and I don't have, in a way, have a clue how to really do it out in the world with my husband and beyond. But I am hopeful that, I guess, by continuing to return and return and return, which is what you said to me in my head student entry, that it may be achieved more fully.
And what I'm saying today is it's already achieved and you can rest in it. It's not actually something you're going to create. It's always there, even in the midst of all of those things you're doing. How sweet, how tender, how human.
Thank
And
you.
it's in what he's doing and what you're doing and what I'm doing and what Aaron's doing as we do the same thing.
And we're all doing it together.
Yeah.
You know,
And in the midst of all the different things we're trying to do and accomplish, one of the great um, gifts is when Aaron stops me and says, "Can we just sit on the sofa together?
yeah, I
Can we
agree.
just sit?" And so, like, now we're getting somewhere.
Thank you. Thank you.
And give your best to your husband, please. Chris.
Hi, Flint.
Hey.
Um, your talk was dead center for what I'm working with. Um, I'm going through a giant life shift. 3 months ago, I got a foot infection, a serious one, that had me in hospital and rehab for 2 months. And so that was not just a medical crisis. It also became a catalyst showing me things in my life that were not serving me, were not going to serve me, maybe never really did. And so I guess the biggest change that I'm looking at is I'm probably not going to live in my house again for a handful of reasons.
So this was your "you must change your life" line.
And letting go of a lot of ambitions, plans, hope, because I realize that I can't do them now, which mostly has to do with my continuing journey into chronic fatigue. I just don't have the energy.
So even though like the statue, your arms maybe falling off, your legs are falling. I mean, metaphorically,
Uh, yeah, that's
fullness
right.
of your being is still there like a lamp.
I
If
keep,
if you can accept where you are now.
well, that's what I'm not doing very well with. I keep getting the mental image of a beautiful bowl, a ceramic bowl, a beautiful colored bowl that's dropped and shattered. And I have really no idea what is going to come next. I know a lot of those pieces are not going to rejoin whatever the next bowl looks like. Some will, but a lot of them won't. And I have no clue what's going to come next. And I'm scared. Uh,
Yeah, we
I
don't
think
know, can't know. Remember those things.
exactly. I can't know.
Mhm.
And I don't think I've ever been in this situation. I think I've always had at least some substantial idea of what was ahead for me, even if it wasn't pleasant. And I feel just completely at sea right now. And I'm scared.
Absolutely. I understand. It's probably one of the hardest things you've ever faced and probably the biggest gift. You know, the image in the first of Trudy's poem was being at sea and feeling those things. But remember when she said in the second, I soothe, I'm soothed by my pretense that I can grasp meaning and pattern, and I betray myself by pretending that I can grasp meaning and pattern.
It's
Wow.
lovely to read in a poem, but when it's your life,
I know. I'm just reminding you. And when it's your life, you know, Rilke says you must change your life, not somebody else's life.
yeah,
Yeah. And you've practiced a long time and you have a lot of this under your belt. And you're talking about it right now in a coherent way. You're expressing the feelings that you're actually having, which are appropriate. This is moving forward. This isn't big stop. This isn't brokenness. This is the fullness of what life is when these things happen.
for a long time, I've said to people that my trust in my practice is bone deep. And at the moment, I'm having trouble getting to that feeling and trust. And yet, there's really nothing else.
That's right. If you can sit under the tree and set your ideas about where a practice should take you and put that on the
Yeah.
side and just be with where you are and see what comes. It's like letting the statue see back to you. Find out what life is asking of you. It's like, oh, now this. You're left with just, oh, I didn't expect now this.
Yeah.
Mhm. But we go so quickly too. And then if I practice well, I'll get somewhere. That's
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
you're full, you're whole, you're luminous. And sometimes it does not feel that way, and you won't see yourself that way.
Yeah.
And so you sit in the midst of wholeness and luminosity, which is all around you all the time, and let it illuminate you, which is what's happening right now as 60 people look back at you.
Yeah.
And I hope you heal wonderfully. And I'm glad that you got good treatment. I hope you didn't lose any appendages in the process.
Oh, just a couple of toes. They were good soldiers.
Yeah, good. Okay.
I bid them a fond farewell. as they were putting me under in the operating room.
Yeah, so that's your offering on the altar of changing your life.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for
Thank you,
showing
Flint.
up. Mhm. Let's continue our final chant, caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Thank you for your kind and loving attention. It's wonderful to be with you. Ed?
Yes, thank you, Flint. It was lovely to be with you. And thank everybody for being here. I just want to remind you that Apamata's programs, facilities are supported through your generosity. And you can do so at apamata.org/contribute. And you can contribute to Apamata itself and to an individual teacher. And if you'd like to hang around some more, we have 28 more minutes to be together for the porch. So just put yourself in gallery mode and you will have the ability to unmute and we'll enjoy some more time together.